Hello, Comics Alternative fans. Before we start with the episode, we want to invite all of you to check out our Patreon campaign.
That's right. Go to www.patreon.com/comicsalternative for more details. There you'll find more information about the campaign and the cool rewards levels we have.
For as little as $1 a month, you can help us maintain good quality comics talk, and the more you contribute, the more perks you get.
These include monthly podcast episodes exclusive to Patreon supporters, as well as the chance to help us choose which books we review on the show. So be sure to visit www.patreon.com/comicsalternative and become one of our proud podcast patrons.
Yeah, and now on with the show.
This is the Comics Alternative, on location and talking with creators at SPX 2015, Part 1. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative on location. I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy, and we're two guys with PhDs talking about comics.
That's right. And this past weekend, Andy and I were both at Small Press Expo, and while we were there, we made it a point to interview a variety of creators. And in fact, we interviewed so many that we're going to have to put all of them into 3 separate on-location interview shows. So this is the first of the 3. But before we get started with those conversations, we want to let all of you guys know that this episode of the Comics Alternative on location at SPX is brought to you by the wonderful folks at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There you're going to find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off of the cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, you'll find that those discounts are 20 to 35% off of the cover price. And every single month, you're going to find some wonderful, incredible, unbelievable specials. Sometimes those specials are at 45% off cover price, sometimes at 50% off cover price, and often you'll find discounts that are much more impressive than that.
And man, will you find some bundles at DCB Service. You can find DC bundles, Marvel bundles. There is an exceptional 2, actually, Vertigo bundles, bundle number 1 and bundle number 2, as well as a Valiant bundle. And all of these are 50% off of the normal price, except for the Vertigo bundle number 1, which is 75% off.
That's just unbelievable. I can't believe it, Andy.
I can't either.
But you know, we and our listeners will have to go to the website to just see if this actually exists. So check out dcbservice.com for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And after you do get your comics at Discount Comic Book Service, please do send them an email and tell them that the 2 guys with PhDs sent you.
That's right.
So, Andy, as I said at the top of the show, this is going to be the first of 3 on-location interview episodes, people that we spoke with at Small Press Expo 2015. And we have a lot of people that we're going to be speaking with in this episode, so let's go ahead and get to it. You're going to hear interviews with these individuals: Derf Backderf, Theora Kvitka, Ethan Riley, Miss Lasko-Gross, Stuart and Kathryn Immonen, Jennifer Jordan and Sophie Goldstein, Gina Wynbrandt, Julian Hanshaw, Kristen Gudsnuk, Rune Ryberg, Towle, Closser, and Meags Fitzgerald. So that's a lot of people, Andy.
That is a lot of people, and that's just our first show.
That's just the first show. Well, let's go ahead and let our listeners hear what we were talking about.
Let's do that.
I am here at SPX 2015 at the table of Derf Backderf. His book, Trashed, is just out. Is it just out now, or it's just about to come out and you have copies now?
It's just about to come out and I have copies now, yeah.
Okay. So, Derf, I know this is the very first day, the first hour of the event. Have things been very hectic for you so far?
No. A long line at the coffee shop, that was about it.
That was the most hectic it got.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll ask tough questions, and that's where the hecticness can come in. Okay, so this is a brand new book of yours, and I think many of our listeners already know your work, but from some of the things that we've discussed in the past. In fact, My Friend Dahmer was one of the very first books that we reviewed on the podcast. Yeah, I think it was maybe the second or third episode. And then, True Stories, that first volume. This is Trashed. How is this different?
Well, it's an all-original graphic novel. It's actually based on some earlier stories I did. I did a floppy way back when, late 90s, and then I did a couple web comics, and then I just kind of spun it into a long book. It's about garbage men. It's about a look at this secret world of garbage collection. It's this raucous comedy about just the crappiest of crap jobs imaginable. It's got some great characters, and it's inspired by my own experiences as a garbage man. I was a garbage man when I was 20 and 21. So it's reality based, but it's a piece of fiction. So it's fiction, even though your life story is woven within it. It's not autobiography. No, it's not autobio. No. I'm most known for autobio because of My Friend Dahmer, but my preference is actually to write fiction because my other two books are fiction. So now, how long have you been working on Trash? You were talking about little bits of it appeared at different times. Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, I mean. I did 2 web episodes that took about 6 months in different years, and it was just kind of a fun project to do while I was working on other things. And Charlie, my editor at Abrams, actually, when he heard about it, we were discussing what to do after My Friend Dahmer, which is a bit challenging, following up an international bestseller, I mean, it's a nice problem to have, but still. And I just mentioned this, and he goes, whoa, that sounds great, let's do that. So I hadn't really even thought about doing it as a book. And then I sat down and wrote it out, and 240 pages later, here it is. And in fact, you anticipated one of the questions I wanted to ask. I mean, given the fact that My Friend Dahmer was such a success, and as you point out, internationally, got a lot of attention all over, how has that affected your work psychologically, perhaps? Oh, I'm crushed. I curl up in the fetal position for 6 months now. I mean, what can you do? So how do you follow up, a great work of literature that everyone says, yes, it was a bestseller, it's the best thing? Well, you can't follow it up. I mean, and why worry about it? I mean, it's better to have a bestseller than to not have a bestseller, so you just keep working, and that's why I wanted to get this book out this year, and I actually flipped it around in about a year, because I had just spent so long touring and promoting My Friend Dahmer that time kind of got away from me, and it's like, oh crap, it's been 3 years, so I really needed to get going. And now this book is out, and so I've done my follow-up, and I'll move on to another book, I mean, there'll never be another My Friend Dahmer because there isn't one. So why worry about it? If I was like 20 and that was my debut book, my debut work, I think it'd be a bigger problem, but I'm not 20, and I've been working for 35 years, so it's I don't think it's really that big a problem. Well, in terms of getting to your relationship with with Abrams, I mean, how did you broach the topic of My Friend Dahmer to the publisher? I had an agent. I sold it to a book agent because My Friend Dahmer at one point or another had been turned down by every comics company in the business, which I take great delight in reminding them of whenever I meet them. So it was, I figured I had to get it to a big publisher, and the way to do that is you have to have a book agent first. So I sent it to a book agent and found one. It took about 50 submissions, but finally found one who said, yeah, I like this a lot. And he landed it at Abrams. That was his doing. So I know a very abbreviated version was self-published, correct? Yeah, right here. Yeah, back. You have it right. Oh, I didn't even need to notice. I have a few copies left. Yeah, that was because this came out in like 2002, I think. It was because I couldn't find a publisher. I'd already been turned down by, tons of people. So I just put out this little floppy as kind of an ash can, Here, this is what it'll look like, because people are having trouble envisioning it, Well, they hear the word Dahmer and they think heads in the refrigerator, necrophilia, no thanks. And it's not about that at all, but they just couldn't get past the name. So I put this out in the hopes of attracting a publisher, and that failed completely. But this little floppy has become this, like this cult classic. And these things go for like $200 on eBay now.
Oh, really? And you're selling it for 10,
yeah,
so...
Yeah. So come by the booth and grab one. Well, I just don't feel right, bilking somebody for $200.
So now, getting back to your new book that's about to come out, Trashed. Now, this is, you would consider this a graphic novel that has beginning, middle, and end?
Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah, this is basically, I redrew a lot of the 2 web episodes and then just added a bunch, another 200 pages on the end of it. I already had it written out. The nice thing about it is that I know the characters, I'm comfortable with the story, so it was very easy for me to write, which was nice. After My Friend Dahmer, you don't want to sit around and think about things too much. So I think it's a very, it's a good read, and it's gotten great reviews, so I'm hopeful it'll do well.
It occurs to me that given Trashed and also the topic of many of your other comics, that someone could call you a working class cartoonist. I mean, do you see yourself in that light? Have you been called by others like a workers' comics artist?
Well, a Rust Belt cartoonist, people definitely call me that. Because, I guess I'm pretty much the last one left on the Rust Belt. I don't know. With Harvey gone, I'm it. I don't know about working class, but, I definitely was on the back of the truck, very definitely. But I just like stories about, common people. I think they're interesting.
Now, what kind of publicity campaign and tours are you planning on for Trashed?
For Trashed? Well, this is starting now. And I leave for France on Monday, the day after the show here. I'll be 2 weeks in France touring around because they put out Trashed as well. And then after that, I'm going to the new Columbus Comics Festival. And then CAB, Comics Arts Brooklyn, and Miami Book Fest, and then a couple others in there too I'm forgetting. And then back to France for Angoulême in January, and then I'll probably do a month-long tour after that. So
this will have an international feel to it as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they love it. They love my stuff in France. It's crazy.
Well, why do you think that is, that France in particular? Are you the new Jerry Lewis of comics?
Yeah. You know how many times people have told me that I should hand out like candy to everyone who makes that comparison. Yes, I guess so. They love.
Just don't scream lady.
They just love comics there, It's they read comics like no one else, and for some reason these weird little tales of the American Midwest have resonated there. I don't know what it is. I'm at a loss to explain it, but it's one of the best things that's ever happened to me. It's really just a total delight.
Well, what do you have planned, maybe that you're working on now, or maybe a potential future project? I know you're in the midst of Trashed and basking in the glory of its publication.
I thought about it. I just stopped working on this at the end of June. So after a year of just working 12, 13-hour days on it. So I took the summer off. I haven't even started thinking about my next project. When I get done with the tour next spring, I'll sit down and start coming up with something new.
Maybe more true stories?
Oh, yeah, definitely that. That's Alternative Comics right over there. They'll be putting out a couple more volumes of those, which is nice because I'm happy to... They're based on that strip I did for many years in those weekly papers you used to trip over every time you walked into a coffee shop back in the 90s. So it's a nice way to kind of wrap up that part of my life, which was, that was an important part of my career. So and they're great. I love those true stories. So it's nice to collect them all.
Well, Derf, good luck with the touring and with the new book. Thank you very much for taking the time and talking with the Comics Alternative.
Oh, thanks, man.
I'm at the table of Theora Kvitka, and she has a comic that I'm unfamiliar with. It's called It's Happening. So, Theora, If you could introduce me to and educate me and our listeners on not only It's Happening, but your work in general.
Yeah. Well, It's Happening and It's Still Happening are anthologies of dating stories in your 20s, and they're all like humorous, strange things that I've mostly taken from real life, and that's been my what I've published in the past 2 years. But then I also draw comics and that I post online that are just related to living in urban settings and being a millennial and kind of humorous slices of life.
So now you were talking about It's Happening and It's Still Happening based on relationships. It's funny and weird. I mean, one word that came to mind in the 20s and dating, depressing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, you had left that word out. It's like, is everything rosy and happy with your relationship?
No, not so much. I have some friends who like read, especially the second one, I think is a little bit more like maybe depressing, yeah. And I have friends who email me after they've read it and they say, I'm really sorry.
Okay, so let's get into a little of the nitty-gritty of, let's say, the first collection, which is It's Happening. What's Happening is a television show. This It's Happening is something completely different. So what are some of these stories that you were describing as weird, strange, humorous?
Well, I think, each one is usually about a page, and it sort of is like what I like to call like dating skirmishes, where it's sort of like you have maybe a couple dates with someone, nothing really happens, but either, you find out that this person, is like just completely deflates when you try to make conversation with them, or, I don't know, they just disappear without warning, that sort of thing. Sort of like all these characters that you come in contact with.
And then basically It's Still Happening is a follow-up, so same format, small, shorter.
Yes, exactly. It's same format. There are some kind of echoes from the first one into the second one, where it's sort of continuations of kind of how it feels to be single and maybe feeling a little more jaded the second time around.
Now, I see also other comics that you have here. I guess these are cards.
Yes, yeah. I've also got some greeting cards. I've just kind of started doing that, and I like to call them snarky greeting cards.
Snarky?
Yeah, snarky. Like, maybe not something you'd send to grandma, but...
Yeah. Well, there is this snarky tone, I guess, because you have this sign in front that says of your It's Happening books, jaded, rejected, fed up, you're in good company.
Exactly, yeah. Because I do think that the primary reason for wanting to draw this was I wanted to have something to share with my friends who are going through breakups and help them hopefully feel a little better, not like they were alone in this experience.
Because I was going to ask about the genesis of It's Happening, and so this is how you came up with the idea?
Yeah, definitely. I think I had one friend in particular who went through a really nasty breakup, and I wanted to cheer her up, and wanted to be like, hey, this happened to me too, like, we're all in this together, like, we'll be there for each other.
So you're doing this as a sort of friendly therapy?
Yes, exactly. Or just like healing through humor.
That's a good way of putting it. So if our listeners wanted to find your work, where would be the best place to do so?
Yeah, they can go to my website, which is theorakvitka.com, but I know that's kind of hard to spell, but it's I'm also on Twitter as Quippy McSnarky. Quippy
McSnarky?
Yes. Quippy like a quip, and snark like snarky.
Okay, so there's you go. And the website is theorakvitka.com.
That's right. Yes, thank you.
Well, so Theora, thank you very much for talking with me, and good luck with the rest of SPX.
Thank you very much. Nice to talk to you.
And I'm very happy to be here at the Small Press Expo. And one of the first stops on my journey is to see Ethan Riley. And Ethan, your Pope Hats #4 is nominated for an Ignatz Award. Congratulations on that. I know the convention has just started, but what do you think so far?
Yeah, thanks a lot. The convention is really exciting right now. I saw outside there's a gigantic lineup, and it's a good show. It's a very kind of a focus show where everyone kind of congregates in the same place and stays in the same hotel. So it's nice to see old friends, and I've just met a new cartoonist from Denmark, Rune Ryberg.
That's very cool.
I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he's a sweet guy. So it's really a fun opportunity to meet some new cartoonists and to get a sense of the comics culture in different countries as well.
Well, I mentioned to you off the mic that we reviewed Popats number 4 on a show we did recently. We really enjoyed it, and I'll be honest, it was my first exposure to your work. I thought it was just extremely powerful. I loved the characterizations. When can we look for Popats number 5?
Oh, I really appreciate that. Thanks. I think Popats 5 will probably take at least another year to be released. Actually, Popats 5 is going to be the end of this ongoing story, and Popats 4, which I just put out, or I put out earlier in the summer, was actually supposed to be that part of the story, but it became so difficult that I decided I needed to segue and try to take a creative break and do short stories. So I actually kind of had it in mind that people like yourself would be able to introduce themselves to Popats through this issue, which is all short stories and self-contained.
Now, I'm noticing that Popats, do you have 2 here? I see 1 and 3 and 4.
Issue number 2 has been sold out and out of print for years, and I still get emails about it. I'm down to my last 3 or so copies.
Oh, no.
But yeah, no, unfortunately it's out of print, but the main story that's within it eventually will be collected as a book.
Okay. That was one of my questions. I know they're all slightly different size. That was my next question. Will it be collected? When can we look forward to that?
Hopefully soon after Popats 5 comes out. Yep.
Well, listen, thanks so much for talking with us, and I hope you have a great convention.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
I'm standing in front of Miss Lasko-Gross, and we talked with you on the podcast several months ago, I think toward the beginning of the year, when Henny was just released. But here I see you now for the first time. I get to see you in person. I've never met.
It's like we're real people meeting each other in the real world like people don't do anymore.
Exactly. And so I know that you're not some kind of virtual construct that we spoke with. You're an actual human being.
Behold, I am in the flesh.
So since we talked way back at the beginning of the year, and then, what was that, January or February maybe?
Probably February.
Yes. What has been the reaction to Henny?
Well, the sales have been good. I've been getting a very positive fan feedback. And honestly, I've been encouraged. I've been working on the second one, which is coming out probably next fall. And I just got back from the Library of Congress's National Book Festival where I was a guest. And I got to share the stage with the amazing and legendary Diane Newman and Trina Robbins. And that was a huge honor for me. And a great chance to share a little Henny with whoever's interested.
Well, tell me more about that experience. I mean, what all went on there?
Well, the bibliophile in me had her wildest dreams come true. I got to go to the Thomas Jefferson Building in the Library of Congress, which is a palace to books and literature. I got to have hors d'oeuvres next to an actual Gutenberg Bible, which for me is very exciting because I consider that the first book that... it is the first book that was not hand-copied and only in the hands of a small religious elite and a wealthy elite. So that's a very exciting book to be so close to, and I can't believe it's not protected by armed guards, given its cultural importance. And got to hear wonderful speakers, hear about all kinds of books that I'm now going to go into debt buying from the amazing authors. And also got to see the archive of original artwork that they have in the prints. I got to see Amazing Fantasy 15, of course, the first appearance of Spider-Man and Ogglebat, as well as some Winsor McKay's and some Charles Schultz originals and a Tamaki. So a beautiful, nerdy, I'm nerding out right now just thinking about it, a really exciting experience for someone who loves books and art.
So now you mentioned that you're at work now on the second installment of Henny, and how far along are you in the story? Or maybe another way of asking, when may we expect to see the next volume?
Well, hopefully next fall. It's going to be about 210 pages. I'm nearly done with it, actually. And it just needs a lot of digital tweaking and cleaning up the stray food marks and whatnot, and handprints and all that good stuff in Photoshop. And I'm also going to be doing a series called The Sweetness from Z2, which I'm just going to be writing and my husband's going to be drawing, which is full circle for us because that's how our relationship began. We were working on a comic book together, and the comic book went nowhere, but the relationship has lasted. So we'll be doing a series together called The Sweetness for Z2.
Now, okay, what is The Sweetness going to be about?
Oh boy, this is so early. I don't have my elevator pitch down. It's about...
Okay, take your time. It could be an escalator pitch.
Escalator pitch, okay. How about some kind of like a slow river tributary pitch? Okay, it's actually about two badass women smugglers in outer space. So very different from what I've done before. Of course, thematically, I can't help but pull in some feminist undertones into the text. But it'll be a really fun, really wild adventure.
Now, how might that be different from that earlier comic that you and your husband worked on where you originally met?
We were both, it was about 12 or 13 years ago, so we were both very green, and it was Back to the Future meets Groundhog Day, and it was sci-fi, and it was something the world was not ready for, or at least that's what we tell ourselves, because it was a bitter failure, but the road has many of those along it, as well as successes. So exciting to work together again. Between the two of us, we're like one fully functional human being. Our skills and our deficits dovetail nicely, so I think it's going to be it's fun, or it'll tear us apart, one or the other.
Now, have you, outside of the earlier stuff, have you worked with your husband before on a comics project that's taken off?
Nothing that's taken off. We of course look over each other's work, and we give each other very very, very harsh critiques that are the kind that you really need to hear, like art school professor / reality show mean British judge. That's a gorilla arm, the perspective's wrong, that color is not working, and just very blunt, and I think it's made us both much better artists. My husband, by the way, is Kevin Colden, just for your listeners, and he's an excellent artist and writer in his own right, so.
Is he here?
No, he's at home with our son. We trade off who does what show.
Oh, okay, so it's not like you could leave it at a relative's house.
No, they're having a guys' weekend. They're eating all kinds of bad food, probably playing video games, watching too much TV, all that fun stuff, because mom's out, so it's all pepperoni pizza and rainbows.
Okay, so you have the new project, you have the second volume of Henny that's wrapping up. Any plans on getting back to more autobiographical comics as we had in your earlier work?
Yeah, I'm actually not willingly, but a door has opened in my mind, which happens as a writer sometimes, and I've started writing my third autobio book. It'll be college years, art school. It's a really dark and twisted time in my life, so I won't be getting to that until I finish all of these other projects, but the stories are starting to pull themselves together into a cohesive narrative.
Now, is this third installment going to be, you said, kind of dark? Is it going to be darker than even the earlier books?
Darker, but also more grotesque and funny and raunchy and all the things people come to expect. It's just that the lows are so much lower and the highs are so much goofier.
So something else to look forward to. Well, Miss, thank you very much for talking with us again for the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very pleased to be talking with Kathryn Immonen and Stuart Immonen here at Small Press Expo. Hi guys, how is it?
Great, how are you?
Pretty good.
Hi, how are you?
I know it's early in the convention and pretty early in the day, but so far, what do you think?
It's amazing. This is our first year here, and everyone just seems sort of happy and
enthusiastic.
So I can't ask for anything more.
And willing to be surprised, I think, that people are not only coming to us and talking about our work, which is wonderful, but they're asking for our recommendations on other things that might be available here, which is fantastic. It's a great community.
They're a curious bunch, which is really, I think, the best that we can be as readers and fans, for sure.
Well, that's great that people are asking, what do you like? What do you read? That's really great. Of course, one of the books that I read this year that I love is Russian Olive to Red King, and that book's been out now for
a couple of months. I think the beginning of June was when we first had it at TCAF in Toronto. So it's through the summer. I guess we're into September now, aren't we?
Yes.
So.
Time eroding, right. Slipping away.
None of us are getting any younger.
So I know the response that the people that I've talked to has been overwhelmingly positive. I'm sure you're getting the same types of responses from readers.
Well, I think that most of the communication in our business seems to happen online, and we're not really on social media, so we don't get too much of a first-hand response. But there have been a couple of positive reviews, which we really appreciate, and I think that's the kind of thing that tends to move the needle as far as getting retailers on board.
Well, we know that it's a book that really kind of defies categorization, and so I won't say it's been a tough sell, but I think people are, understandably trepidatious. It's, but we wanted to make it worth their purchase dollars for sure. So the response has been positive. People that have read it have come back to us, and it's really gratifying. I think we knew how we were responding to the material when we produced it. And parts of it felt very, I wouldn't say overly personal, but it's kind of an emotional book with a lot of strange depths, and certainly in the back third there's stuff lurking there that we're not even sure what's going on. We just know that it was kind of, we had difficult days sort of trying to sort it out. Because for us, it struck some chords. I think you need to be predisposed to a certain kind of melancholy for this book to kind of resonate with you. But it's for the people for whom it's been landing really hard, which has been terrific.
Well, I know you guys do a lot of work for other publishers, the big two. What can you talk about anything creator-owned that you're going to have coming out in the near future?
We had just wrapped up Russian Olive, and even though we delivered it to Chris about a year ago now, just having it come out, we still sort of feel like we're now just kind of at the end of being done with it. There are a couple other things on our plate. We're trying to figure out what the next project is going to be, and I think we've decided, but it's still very in its beginning stages. There isn't even a script. There's just some outlines and stuff. So it'll be another 5 years.
Well, but at the same time, as you say, we're working for other companies, and that's the work that brings in our the majority of our income anyway. So the work like Russian Olive and Moving Pictures before it really tends to happen in interstitial moments in the time that we can carve out in between other work. So besides, just trying to figure out ways to do it in our off hours, we're also committed to the long form in comics as well. So we're doing books that are, so far in the 150, 200 page range, and they do tend to take a little bit longer.
Well, it was worth the wait for Russian Olive, I'll tell you that.
So much. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much for talking with us. I hope you have a great day today and tomorrow while you're here.
Thanks, you
Have
too.
a good show. Bye.
Once again, I'm standing in front of the table of Jennifer Jordan and Sophie Goldstein, as I was a few months ago at Heroes Con. They're here at SPX. So, guys, how is this event going so far?
Oh, it's going really well. Yeah, I think so too. This is my second year at SPX, and it's my favorite con, so I'm having a really good time.
Yeah, I feel like I've been here enough years now where some people sometimes walk by and they recognize things on my table, and that draws them over. So that's always, building that kind of momentum at a show is really important to sales, so that's a good sign.
So we were talking a little bit before the recording about some differences between SPX and Heroes Con. And, I can sense it from an attendee's point of view or from the press point of view. But as creators who are tabling here, what are some of the significant differences between the two? And I'm sure that some of the answers will be obvious.
Let's see. I think, we've only been here for an hour today so far, but we already have a sort of a steadier pace, I think, of foot traffic coming to our table than we did at Heroes Con. I feel like maybe our genre or our sensibility kind of fits here.
Yeah, also, I just know, SPX is a show I've done a number of years, and then this is the smaller part of the comics community, which I'm more familiar with. So it's like I just know so many people here, where Heroes was kind of a new experience where we met so many new faces, and which is great. Like, the meeting new people is really important. But that's just on a personal level. On a wider quantity, there isn't the same kind of cosplay atmosphere or superhero pinup stuff here, but there's also Heroes Con just has like a bigger feel to it. There's a lot more variety in the types of people who are tabling. You have like toys and shirts, and then you have superhero people, and then you have Indie Island, and here this is like an entire con that's Indie Island.
Yeah, and this feels more to me as though I feel like at Heroes Con, people were there to meet creators who they already knew and who they liked, to get more stuff by them. I feel like this is more about exploring, finding new works and new creators. So I feel like there's a little bit of a different intention, I guess, maybe of the attendees. So that's
So there's definitely like some pretty strong differences.
Yeah, I think what you just said about discovering people that you didn't know already, I mean, I feel that that's, for me, one of the main differences in coming to this event. I mean, I discover new people at any con that I go to. I know a lot of people in their work that are attending and tabling at SPX, but in walking around just in the first hour, the vast majority, I'm not familiar with their work, so I feel like I have my work cut out for me this weekend.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that SPX has changed over the past couple of years is now they have the lottery system, whereas before it was more like a juried application process. So that means a lot of people, more new people. The fact that it's random just means that a lot of people are going to get in, whereas before there would be a certain amount of like name recognition, or you need a track record, and there are like obvious positive and negatives to both of those sides. As like a more established creator, sometimes I see a lot of the negative sides of that. But obviously, if you're just starting out, getting a table at SPX is a huge boost. And the benefit for that for attendees is a lot of new faces, so you're not just seeing the same people year in, year out, year in, year out. So that's only been for 2 years now that they've had the lottery system, so that's a new development. So no wonder you're seeing a lot of new people.
So unlike cons like Heroes Con, not anyone can get a table if you pony up the money.
Well, no, I actually think anybody can get a table at SPX if they because you apply and you get a lottery number, and then depending on your lottery number, you can get a table. So there's some people who are invited guests, and those tend to be publishers or people that have been tabling at the show for like 10 years. But then, like, I had to apply the lottery, and I did not get placed in the lottery, but because, my table mate, Theora Kvitka, offered me half of her table, which is how I'm tabling. So it's a lot more open than it has been in the past, even though this is like a show with a lot of cred.
So it's possible that someone could attempt to get a table, not be drawn in the lottery, and so they don't get a table at SPX.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I think there are a lot of people who are willing to share table space or to split. I feel like people are pretty generous with the space that they're given, so it works out. And I feel like this show is unique in that I've seen a lot of people who didn't get tables who are here anyway, just walking around and talking to people. So
yeah,
it's a place that builds community.
Yeah, absolutely. And SPX also has the Nats Awards show, and there's like a chocolate fountain in the evening, if you didn't know about that.
I did not know about that.
Oh, yeah. And then since a lot of people are staying in the hotel, there's a lot of like socializing that happens after hours with the exhibitors. And that's really great, because obviously during the day, we're behind the table. So it's great to have a time that's just social, because, one of the great things about being part of the comics community is the friendships, to be like super cheesy about it.
Now, Sophia, your book, The Oven, which we reviewed on the show several months ago, right before Heroes Con, is up for an Ignatz Award this year. And what are and you do a little dance there. I wish this were a video podcast that I could have shown that. What are your thoughts on this? Now, I mean, you won for the House of Women. You think your luck will hold out?
Well, it's an honor to be nominated. I of course am hopeful that I will win, but I mean, it's a great boost either way, and I'm trying not to like build up too much expectation about it, and because there are so many like strong nominees, and it's going to be a lot of fun, and I still get a silver sticker to put on my books, but that gold sticker would be really nice, and my mom would be so proud. So I'm hopeful.
Well, I'm going to be pulling for you for tonight.
Yeah, so yeah, please campaign.
Well, as a journalist, I have to be impartial, so I guess I shouldn't say that, I'll be pulling for you.
Well, what happens off the air is not reported.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, guys, listen, good luck with the rest of the con, and good luck with the Ignatz Awards tonight, and thanks for taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm at the table of Gina Wynbrandt, and I just, within the past several weeks, was introduced to her mini-comic Big Pussy, and now she is right here in front of me. So, Gina, thank you for talking with us.
Of course, I'm very happy to talk to you.
Now, I have to admit, I wasn't aware of your work before the list of Ignatz nominees went up, and then I thought, okay, this is interesting. And then my co-host and I decided to do a show devoted to the Ignatz Awards for this year, and I got in touch with you. You were kind enough to send me a copy. Now, I'm familiar with the story. How would you introduce this book to our listeners?
Big Pussy is the story of me approaching adulthood and freaking out that I am still living at home with my mom and don't have a real job. But in Sailor Moon, if you're familiar with the backstory of that, she is like a lazy crybaby who doesn't do anything right, just like me. But then a magical cat, Luna, comes in and trains her to be a superhero. So I took that idea and tried to find cats that would like to repeat that process, but I found just like horrible feral cats who torture me basically and make me a tough adult.
Now, I have to mention that this is not a video podcast. How do I describe those feral cats? They creep me out. They creep the hell out of me. They have these weird human faces.
I like drawing human faces, and I thought it would be too hard to make a regular cat face expressive, so I just looked at pictures of Robert De Niro and Ray Liotta for reference, and drew
really
cats. Yeah.
Oh, it's funny because I didn't get that. I didn't know. Or did I just not pick up on the visual? Okay.
Because I used a bunch of different, just tough-looking male actors to draw from.
And then, in one of the ways that the cats train you, let's say, it gets rather explicit.
Oh, can I talk about it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, the cats apparently have access to the computer, and when they Googled Sailor Moon, actually, in the story, it goes by Lunar Princess for copyright reasons. But when I say Sailor Moon, I mean Lunar Princess. But they went on a hentai website, because there's tons of, Sailor Moon porn on the internet. And they're like, oh, this is what Sailor Moon is, because they didn't know. So then the cat has sex with me, and I, for the first time, do not cry. And they're like, we did it, success! And then we celebrate. That's the midpoint of the story. And, I can... I'm a baby about a lot of things, but at least I can take a dick.
And from a feral cat, that's...
Yeah. They have
barb and all.
Barb penis, yeah. Not nice, yeah.
So, and we can put an explicit rating on this interview.
Yeah, safe, yeah.
Now, one of the other things I wanted to ask you about is you have a piece in this year's Best American Comics from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. In fact, I just got my hard copy several days ago. Oh, you don't have one yet?
Oh, I want it. Yeah, I don't have it yet.
I mean, they will send you one, right?
Yes. That's part of my compensation. I get a copy.
Okay. Is that the only compensation?
No, I also get a big check that's also yet to arrive.
I was about to say, because if they only give you a copy, you need someone to negotiate for you. No, one of the things we do on the Comics Alternative at the end of every year, at our second to the last show in December, is we always focus on that year's Best American Comics. So we'll be talking about your work again.
And, like I said, I just got my copy. We're also going to be talking with Bill Cardelopoulos, who's the new series editor. So who got in touch with you about the selection of your work? Was it Bill or was it Jonathan Lethem?
It was Bill. Well, I met Bill at Cake last year, and he bought my comic that I eventually submitted, and we talked a little bit. And we were Facebook friends, and I saw he was like, now accepting submissions, and I'm like, I guess I sent it to him. And he read it. I don't know. Yeah, he's the one that told me, like, oh, congrats, you're selected. That was in, like, December. And it's been so painful to have the whole year of, like, not being able to tell people about it. Like, because I want everyone to know that I'm in it.
When did they tell you could begin telling people?
They still haven't said it. I didn't even know I could say this right now. Like,
in fact, reading copies went out over a month ago. Yeah, because I got a reading copy, and then I got my finalized copy just a few days ago.
Oh, well, I emailed Bill sometime in the summer, and I was like, hey, I'm ready to tell everyone that I'm very famous now. When can I make it public? And he's like, just wait a little bit longer. And because I want it to be somewhere on the internet that I could like link to and be like, look, I didn't make this up. So since there's no like article yet, or I don't have my own copy, I haven't mentioned it. But
well, you'll now be up on the Comics Alternative blog. So
breaking exclusive news on the Comics Alternative.
So this has been a big year for you. You had the nomination for the Ignats, which are going to be announced tonight, and good luck with that. And then you also have this upcoming appearance in Best American Comics of 2015. So how do you follow this up?
Oh, I don't know. I guess I peaked and I should stop now. But no, I'm working on a book with 2D Cloud that's coming out next year. It's going to be a collection of all my minis and then one new mini. It's called Someone Please Have Sex With Me. So look for that on the bestsellers list next year.
If our listeners wanted to find out, and why shouldn't they, if they wanted to find out more about your work and where they can get your comics, where they can order them, where would they go?
You can find out more about my work on GinaWynbrandt.com or follow me on Twitter at GWYNBR. And you can buy Big Pussy through 2D Cloud's website, 2dcloud.com.
Listen, good luck tonight, and congratulations on Best American Comics, and thank you very much for talking with me.
Thank you so much.
One of my favorite graphic novels of 2015 was Tim Ginger by Julian Hanshaw, and I'm very pleased to be talking with him. Julian, how are you?
I'm very well. Good to see you, Andy.
It's good to see you, too. We were talking before we started recording about what the book meant to me. Can you tell people that may not be familiar with the book just a brief, what's it about?
It's an old man coming to terms with his choices, his life choices that he's made, and some of them have been forced on him. And I guess the bottom line is, Tim Ginger is me. I can't see out of one eye. I love the desert. I'm a cricket obsessive. I believe in UFOs, and I don't have any children by choice.
Yeah, that covers a lot of ground, and one of the things I was amazed about the book is it touches on so many things, not just not having children, but some of the isolation that you feel, and the desert setting has a lot to do with that, I know, and reestablishing old relationships, the joy that can come with that, and the tentative nature, is this the right thing to do? It can be scary. You touched on so many things, but your initial idea was, tell us about your initial idea.
The initial, it really came about, I did want to approach a subject of childless by choice. And the whole idea was the concept came about when I was staying in you guys call it a trailer, we call it a caravan, in Bisbee, Arizona. So there I was, in Bisbee, Arizona, in an Airstream, coming up with an idea, and the world just began to formulate that I am going to be this character. I love the desert. I'm going to put myself in the desert. I'm going to bring cricket over with me, and just try to construct the world from there. Really. Did that answer your question?
That answered it perfectly, I'm sure. Yeah, that's great. So what kind of reception are you getting from the book right now?
I'm getting a really good reception. I did have a concern that cricket might be a bit of a, excuse the pun, bit of a curveball. but people seem to have, I don't think I've kind of hammered it home too much. People seem to have got the concept, and also the concept that cricket over here in America is a very marginalised sport. So what that did, I guess that kind of underlined the fact that he's an outsider. He's on the peripheral of everything, his sport and his life. But it's been picking up good press here and in the UK as well. I've been really chuffed, especially as this is my first publication with Top Shelf in the US. So I'm an unknown over here. So it's early steps.
That's great. I mean, again, it was one of my favorite books of the year, and I can't wait to see what you're going to do next. And can you give us a hint of what you might be doing now?
It's going to involve space. Whether it's going to be set in space or in the future, I'm not entirely sure. I want to look at the secret NASA space program. So there's going to be a little bit of that someday.
Wow, that sounds really... I can't wait. Well, I know things are getting busy here, so I'm going to let you go. And thank you so much for talking with us and for the book.
Great stuff, Andy. It's really lovely to have met you. Take care.
I'm here with Kristen Gudsnuk, and if that name sounds familiar, then you listened to our monthly webcomic series. A few months ago, Andy Wolverton and I discussed Hinch Girl, and so now I have the creator of Hinch Girl right in front of me. Kristen, how are things going at XPS for you?
Oh, it's going great. I've never done this convention before, but it's pretty fantastic. There's a lot of people here.
So you're like me, you're a newbie to SPX.
Yes I am.
Except your experience as a newbie is from the creator's side of the table. I'm here from, I guess, the media attendee point of view. So now, another thing that we have also noticed on the podcast is you are going to have a Hinch Girl series coming out from Scout.
That's true. It should be out in the next month or so.
So for our listeners, especially those who may not have jumped on board with the webcomic, explain how the new Scout series is going to be building upon and playing off of, or maybe even enhancing, the webcomic.
Well, I view the physical books as just being a way to reach people who don't like to read comics online. So it's basically the same content online, except redrawn parts of it. And also with extra features like mini comics and stuff like that, and some extra pinups. But it should be available from your local comic store, so you should definitely go in there and request it.
And for those who have had the benefit of going at cons, and I'm seeing here the actual physical copies of Hinch Girl, this will be different from these issues, right? Because they'll be recolored and redrawn.
And new covers, too. I'm just a masochist. I can't not draw new covers for some reason. I mean, I like these old covers because they're all totally different, but I wanted the official books to have a more, like a series style, so that it was more instantly recognizable that it was part of a whole, consistent series.
Now, for those who aren't familiar with Hinch Girl and who maybe haven't listened to our webcomic series, how would you introduce this to our listeners?
Well, I do have my pitch line, which is Hinch Girl is a slice of life comic about a girl who works for a villain. But the problem is that she has a conscience, so her job is pretty tough. I don't know, that's how I describe it. I'm kind of bad at summing things up.
So from the villain point of view, she is quite likable.
I'd say so. I mean, she kind of has a character arc, where she sort of devolves, I guess, from being a generally okay person to maybe making some bad life choices, because you don't want things to be static.
Now you're still continuing with the webcomic series, right?
Oh yeah, but however, it is going to be finite. It's going to be 11 issues. I finished writing it, so there's not a ton left. I kind of like it when stories have, beginning, middle, and an end.
So how many issues from Scout, the publisher Scout Comics, will there be total?
I'm not sure. I assume 11, unless it doesn't sell well. In that case, however many they want. But, when it's done, I'm going to put it out in a trade no matter what.
Or on the upside, if it does sell very well, more than you expected, maybe you can have an extra 12th epilogue.
Yeah, but 11 has an epilogue. I don't want to spoil anything, but it does. A long epilogue.
Well, you're not spoiling because you didn't tell us what
I almost did, though.
We could always bleep that out.
No, it's fine. It's okay.
So, okay, after Hinch Girl, what other projects do you have going on? What's fermenting?
I might be writing a comic for... I'm not supposed to say this. I might be writing a comic for a publisher, which is still in the works.
Is this a big publisher?
Yeah, relatively. I'm not going to say it, though, because they were like, whatever. There's that. I have a book series that I'm illustrating for Little Brown, and I'm working on sort of an indie space western comic. I'm almost done with it, actually. I'm just illustrating it. I'm working with a writer. And I am illustrating some stuff in an anthology. And then finally, I also have a new graphic novel that I just finished writing the script for, and I've been doing character designs, and I'm going to start, putting that together to send off and see if I can get it published.
So none of these are webcomic based?
No, not really. I mean, most of them are just things that I'm doing to make money, so it's not like a lot of the stuff is just someone hiring me to draw something or write something.
Would you see yourself returning to the webcomic forum as you did with Hinch Girl?
I'd like to. I'm not sure, though. I guess it depends on where I am in a year. But I do love webcomics because they give you this instant gratification. If you don't have that, then it's you have to wait months before you get that praise from random adoring fans, etc. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, in wrapping up, let me say that if you haven't already, you should thank your boyfriend because he's the one who told us about Hinch Girl and said, hey, you ought to talk to her and review Hinch Girl on your webcomic show.
Yeah, Jordan's pretty great. Thank you, Jordan. I know, he's my publicist, basically.
Well, Kristen, thank you very much for taking the time and talking with the Comics Alternative.
Oh, yes, thank you. Thanks for reviewing Hinch Girl and all that, and enjoy the rest of the show.
You too. At SPX, I'm at the ad house section of the floor, and I'm standing in front of Rune Ryberg. Am I mispronouncing that in the Danish way?
No, it's pretty close. It's Rune Ryberg.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's easier to say Rune. Just stay like that.
Now, your book, Gigant, is something that we have mentioned before on one of our episodes. It was we mentioned this with a preview show a few months ago, but the release date is, this week?
Yeah, it's today, Saturday today at SPX.
So we haven't had the time to go through and look at Gigant to see what it's about. So for those who haven't picked up the book yet, how would you describe Gigant to the uninitiated?
Oh, well, it's a story about this short fellow who is called Gigant. It's like an ironic nickname. And he's on a picnic with his girlfriend, and she is getting swallowed by a monster and sent to another dimension. So he leaps after her to save her. And it's a really action and bang for the buck with a lot of colors. Yeah.
What is the genesis of Gigant?
I came up with it with the name first, I think, and then I made this little drawing of a guy who I thought was really funny, and it sort of just developed from there. It sort of came into a short story. I was supposed to do just 20-page story because it was my first comic book. So I just wanted to make something short and condensed and get it done. But I was lucky enough to get some arts funding for it from the Danish Arts Foundation. And then I sort of got stressed out about that, and I thought, okay, it's got to be a little bit longer and a little bit better. So I rewrote it a little bit, and it sort of morphed into this weird psychedelic story about this little guy.
So Gigant is actually your first comic, or it started off as your first comic?
Yeah, it's my my debut comic book. I haven't done any comic books before. Not the I'd done some stuff as a kid, but I wanted to do a comic book for a while, and this story just really spoke to it. It would work really nice like that.
Well, actually, that kind of squelches my next question, because I was going to ask if this is your first publication in English, but this is your first publication, period.
Yeah, this is my first ever publication, yeah.
Okay, so how did you get hooked up with Chris Pitzger and Ad House?
I was supposed to go to MoCA show in New York back in April, and I wanted to get in contact with some American publishers there. So prior to that, I wrote some emails to my top 3 priority American publishers, and Chrissy wrote me back instantly, and we got everything sorted, I think, within 24 hours. It was very fast.
So is there a Danish version of this that it's also going to be released at about the same time or later?
It was published in Denmark 1 year ago.
Oh, okay.
At the Danish publisher called Forlands. And it went really well. It sold out within 4 months, so we had to do a second print run, and it won an award this spring at a Copenhagen Comics Festival. Won an award for the best children's and youth comic. So very excited about that, yeah.
So now, is there any difference between the Danish and the English editions except for the language translation?
No, none at all. The English one has got a little art behind the scenes section in the end with some sketches and turnarounds and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's the only difference.
So now this has been successful over in Denmark because you mentioned the award. It's just come out here. It's going to get some traction. Do you have any other projects, anything else going on right now?
Actually, before I got it published, even in Danish, I started working on my second book. It's going to be a really long one, like a 250 pages book about 2 teenagers in the mid-90s playing pinball machines. It's called Death Save, which is a move you make, really complicated move on the pinball machine where you try to save the ball from draining. And it sort of reflects what they have to do on their own lives because there are 2 hoodlums getting into trouble. So yeah, excited about that, but it's going to take a while before I'm done with that. I'm only 3 chapters in right now.
So it sounds like a very different turn from Gigant.
Oh yeah, it's a lot more serious story. It's a little bit, it's semi-autobiographical, but it's a story I've been wanting to make for quite a while. So yeah, it's less fantasy, but still it's got a lot of saturated color and wiggly lines. So that should be a lot of fun in it.
And it'll be a while till we see it, but eventually it'll come out.
Eventually it will come out, and I was lucky enough to get some arch funding from that as well. So I've been able to work concentrated for 4 months or so. Yeah.
Well, listen, good luck with that, Rune. Thank you very much for talking with the Comics Alternative.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm speaking with Ben Towle, whose new book has just come out here at Small Press Expo, Oyster War. And I was telling Ben that I saw it solicited in previews and I thought it looked fun, and I actually heard you telling someone else it's kind of a Tintin, not similar to it maybe in artistically, or what can you tell us about the book?
I think it's sort of, some part, it's kind of, maybe influence-wise, kind of 50%, old E.C. Seeger style, thimble theater, and, maybe 50% kind of Franco-Belgian stuff. It's definitely laid out like a Tintin book. It's a big, European album-sized book. It's, the grid is kind of 4 tiers per page, so it's definitely always meant to be that size, but, hopefully in the combination of those elements, it's all me in the end, but, it's definitely, there's definitely with the coloring and the layout, it's, I was reading a lot of European stuff at the time. I was kind of cogitating on this, so I think that's probably, I'm known to wear my influences on my sleeve, so it's not surprising that people walk up and say, hey, this reminds me a little of Tintin, which is fine. I consider that a compliment,
Yeah, that's a great compliment. Can you tell us a little bit about the story without giving too much away?
It's sort of a nautical fantasy. It uses an actual historical event as sort of a jumping off point, which is the Oyster Wars in the Chesapeake Bay, which is where, in the late 1800s, the oyster bays up in New York and stuff were fished out, and so people would come down to the Chesapeake Bay and sort of try to purloin oysters. And Maryland set up an oyster navy to kind of take care of this activity and round these scoundrels up. And that's sort of my jumping off point. But after that, it kind of goes off the wire. But there's it has sea monsters and pirates and all that kind of stuff, and a selkie, which you can look up online. But it's a mythological creature that's a seal that can turn into a woman. So I'd done a couple of historical fiction books right before this one, and I was sort of ready to be done with researching historically accurate lampshades and stuff like that. So I kind of went off the hinge a little bit with the fantasy elements, but hopefully it's a fun sort of all ages ish story that people will enjoy.
Well, that's great. I was flipping through it, and I was thinking, I'm a librarian. I think this will be great for the library, and especially with the Chesapeake Bay connection. I'm in Maryland too, so yeah, that's going to be very, very, very important for them too. And to tell you, I didn't make the connection. I see the Amelia Earhart book, which I read a couple of years ago, and thought that was a lot of fun. Another great book for kids or people of any age too.
Yeah, that was a fun book, and that got a lot of traction with libraries and schools and stuff. And like I said, this one is much more kind of fantasy, much, obviously not historically based, but I mean, it does have I did do a section in the back that sort of shows some of the real-life inspiration for stuff in the story. It has a little bit of history of, Chesapeake Bay oyster fishing and, all sorts of other things that I sort of fold into the story. So, once you're done reading all the crazy pirates and sea monster stuff, you can at least see where where some of it came from.
Well, listen, thanks for talking with us, and best of luck with the book, and I hope you have a great time here at Small Press Expo.
Thank you very much. You too.
I'm here with Cole Closser. His book, Black Rat, is just coming out from Koyama Press. Is it about to come out, or has it just come out?
It has just come out, I believe.
Okay. So now this is not your first book, but I want to start off by asking you about Black Rat. For our listeners who may not know about your work, how would you describe Black Rat? What is the pitch?
Black Rat is a collection of seven different stories that are all in different narrative styles and visual styles, linked loosely by the appearance of this black rat character. And sometimes the character is anthropomorphized as like a small cartoonish little speaking character, and other times it's an actual rat, sometimes it's a big beast. But it was a way to kind of exercise some things that had been bothering me for a while, and just like a lot of art styles that I think about on a regular basis.
Now, talking about the style aspect of Black Rat, and you're right, it's in different segments, and the segments have a different feel to them. That brings me to your book from, I believe it was last year, Little Tommy Lost, because even though that had a consistent style, it was nonetheless spoken a particular creative voice, in other words, strips. And I'm wondering if, with both of these books, you just have a fascination for different modes of creative expression and comics delivery.
Oh, definitely. And I'm very much a reader, first and foremost, of things. I read a lot of pulp fiction and fantasy and science fiction, and I read just tons of stuff all day, all night. And I look at a lot of old comics, and so these things get stuck in my brain. With Little Tommy Lost, it's very different from Black Rat in that I had a specific story I wanted to tell, and I had a specific era of American cartooning that I was referencing, like a late 20s, early 30s adventure serial style that I was going for. And so I wanted everything to be very particularly, faithful, I guess, to that era. So every phrase in there I researched. Like there's a part where a little boy shouts "gangway," and before he had said Geronimo, but then I wanted to know when Geronimo became a popular phrase and realized I read that it was some paratroopers in World War II had seen a movie about Geronimo, and they shouted it the next time they jumped out of a plane. So I changed it to "gangway" since gangplanks have been around forever, and that sort of thing through the whole book. Whereas Black Rat is very stream of consciousness. It's very much more sort of who I am and the things that I think about, using these characters in the stories as surrogates, sort of.
Now, you mentioned this as kind of a stream, Black Rat, as kind of a stream of consciousness text. I mean, it struck me as having a very dreamlike quality to it, and not only dreamlike in going from one of the particular stories to the next, where there is sometimes an abrupt stylistic shift, but even within the story. So, for instance, in the very first one, you have a guy who's at a table, and he looks down and he sees this black rat. This black rat goes into a hole. He goes through a similar hole, and then what happens to him is this surreal experience, and this keeps happening again and again in a dreamlike manner, kind of like in the way that we dream.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I think there's a lot of dreamlike parts to it. I'm not sure.
I mean, were there dream bases to some of these stories?
Oh no, there are no actual dreams being used in it. I do dream about this kind of stuff. My dreams are mostly sword fights and spaceships and good times.
Which a lot of that happens in Black Rat.
But these are nothing specific from a dream in here. I try not to use dreams as a direct influence on things, just because the logic can be so skewed, and also I'm not sure I'm ready to deal with too much of my own subconscious. So these are Black Rat is more just kind of adventures or situations that I wanted to write about, or just specific narratives I wanted to write about, and then using kind of the visual approach of certain creators that I love, and I list them in the beginning so that people will know who to look for. If they like a specific style, they can just Google the names in the front and they can find out who I was referencing for it. But yeah, it's definitely not, it may be dreamlike, but it's not influenced by dreams as much as it's just me trying to express the things that I had on my mind at the time.
So I was going to ask, how personal are the stories in your work? Specifically Black Rat. So you're saying that you may take a dreamlike approach to the way that the stories unfold, but they're not your dreams. And so these are not any weird, secret, strange fantasies coming out in Black Rat.
No, I don't fantasize about traveling from world to world. Well, that's not true. I guess I do. But that's not what it is. But the stories are deeply personal. So not in the sense of that first story, there are some airplane fights and some deep sea diving, and I have no desire to do those things. But the things that they're saying to each other while they're doing them, those are things that I think or that I feel very deeply, especially the last couple of stories. The last story, Black Rat, Bo White, where he and this little girl travel to the center of the earth, and they find this beast, spoiler alert, at the center of the earth. That's a very personal story. But much of the time, too, I'm taking famous quotes, and then I'm just skewing them so that things sound strange, like he climbs the back of that monster and says, "I climbed you because you was there," which is that Sir Edmund Hillary? Yeah. So little things like that, just so that I want little references and elements for people reading it to laugh, and even if they can't place where it came from, to know they've heard that before, and to kind of get a kick out of that, while at the same time I'm hiding some deep confessions and some other things I'm wrestling with in it. Or, like in the case of Our Watch, which I think is probably my favorite story in there, I just had this imagery in this story that I really wanted to tell. And my girlfriend is a creative writing teacher at the same college that I teach at. And she and I have lengthy discussions about narrative voice. She's obsessed with it. She's an amazing writer. And that was kind of the culmination of the things that she and I had been talking about, finding a way to make that work on paper, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned quotes, and one of the things I specifically wanted to ask you regarding Black Rat is, I guess, a visual quote that I would guess that most readers would recognize, and that the rat that we keep seeing throughout these various stories have ears in such a way that we're reminded of Disney. And so I'm wondering if you were making some kind of comment about Mickey Mouse or the Disney Corporation in any way whatsoever.
No, not at all.
Is that something that I just read into it?
No, I think I've heard that a couple of times, but no, I even the rat. One thing that the rats all have in common is that they all have, what is that? They all have pentagonal ears. So they
that's
have,
right. They're angular. Yeah.
Yeah, they have these specific shaped ears, which might have been a subconscious way of trying to steer away from that. But maybe in an indirect way, I think I was influenced. If I was influenced by a cartoon to start it, the most it would have been Sueho Tagawa's Norakuro, which I'm horrible at pronouncing anything that isn't in the Ozarks. But that was a Japanese wartime comic strip about a little dog who goes around fighting the enemy and flying airplanes and blowing stuff up. But I think there was an element of Norakuro does seem to be referencing Disney, or not Disney, but Ub Iwerks, since he's the one who drew Mickey Mouse. And so there's probably an attempt to make an American rodent version of this Japanese dog version of another American rodent. But yeah, I think... But yeah, he definitely he doesn't wear pants, or if he does wear pants at any point, he never gets close to that outfit of that one mouse that owns the world.
Yeah.
But it's tough if you're gonna do it's like if you, anytime something's that famous, you do a duck and you run the risk of Daffy or Donald, but you do a mouse in the 1920s and you don't have any problems. You do a rat or a mouse today and you're going to draw that comparison, I think, no matter what you do. But I did a cat thing a couple of years ago and somebody said it's Felix. I said it's not Felix, it's a generic 1920s cat, but because Ub Iwerks drew the mouse that way, or various people, tons of different animators did cats a certain way. Our minds, I think, link back to that probably.
Well, it's like creators are going to have to start picking a whole new series of animals now, like maybe a rhinoceros or an aardvark, maybe a platypus.
Yeah, I just have a thing for rats, and so in Little Tommy Lost...
I was going to ask about that. There's a rat throughout Little Tommy Lost.
His sidekick is a rat named Kid, and so I loved that rat, and I was still just fixated on Kid when I started Black Rat, and so Black Rat was probably... If anything, the rat in this book is the same rat from Little Tommy Lost, just because I was still exploring that idea and that animal.
So the stories that we have here in Black Rat, you were in the midst of working on as you were working on Little Tommy Lost?
No, Little Tommy Lost was actually, those strips were written several years ago and would have stayed in a box. I started it as a webcomic. And I don't read many webcomics, and so I didn't really know what I was doing, but I wanted to do a daily strip because I was obsessed with, the old daily newspaper strips and how they had to come up with a story every single day. So I wanted to see if I could do that. But I quickly became terrified of people seeing my stuff, and so I pulled it down, and it never would have seen the light.
Pulled down the webcomic?
Oh, yeah. So it never would have seen the light of day if Annie Koyama hadn't continued to bother me about it, because she really wanted to put it out. So, but the strips in Tommy are probably, I think they were drawn in 2008 or 2009.
Wow.
The majority of them, and then the book itself was pieced together. Some parts were fixed and redone 2 years ago, the year that it came out. But yeah.
And we should mention, for those, because since this is not a video podcast, for those who aren't familiar with Little Tommy Lost, that it is drawn in an old daily strip style. In fact, not only is the art reminiscent of the older strips that one would find, let's say, during the 20s and 30s, but also each strip looks like it's on aged newsprint. So there are, within each, so to speak, week, there are 6 strip, Monday through Saturday, and then the 7th of this week is something that you would find in the Sunday supplement section, a larger color strip. So now this is called Little Tommy Lost Book Number 1. Is there a Little Tommy Lost Book Number 2 on the way?
Yes, it's all around us. I've drawn about half of the second book. And then I put it on hold because I had these other things that were really plaguing me that I wanted to get out. So I'm actually working on, 3 major things right now that are just kind of brewing. And then Black Rat was a culmination of 3 years of work off and on that came together. But Little Tommy Lost will be continued someday. And I never know what to say about it because people will say, "Where's the book?" Or "Will there ever be another book?" And there will be. And I've got many, many strips drawn, and I have the whole story written. It's just a matter of sitting down with Tommy again.
Well, this is an adventure strip, so leaving off at the end or a breaking off point of an adventure, people want to know what happens. So, of course, you're going to get those responses.
It is a cliffhanger, but it also kind of I think at the end of the book there's a preview that kind of shows what's coming, and it's adventure on the high seas, and so there's a lot of that coming up, and much of it has already been drawn. And I will get back to Tommy. I've just got so many other things that I want to write about first before I can. Once I've gotten these other things out, I can sit down with Tommy again, because I do enjoy the character, and I enjoyed the kind of therapeutic daily. I did these one a day for a long time, and then I was doing them 4 and 5 a day for a while. But also the amount of lettering will kill your hand really fast, because I refuse to use the computer font on anything. So everything I do is
handwrite everything.
Everything I do is hand lettered. Even the last 34 pages of Black Rat, it looks like a font. That's a Leroy lettering set, and it's what they use to letter comics like EC Comics. Whenever you couldn't get a letterer that really knew what they were doing, you just use this lettering set, and it's kind of like a stencil. It looks like a ruler, and then it has these indentations of letters. You stick a needle in the indentations. You put a pen, I use a repeatograph, in the other end of it, and then while you trace with the needle in the grooves, the pen writes for you the letters that come out. So it was excruciating. It took over 40 hours to letter 34 pages, but I tried it at first with a font that imitates this set, and I wasn't happy with it, because there are a lot of times where, like, I'm looking at a page right now where the word "now" appears about 50 times, and I didn't like the idea of that "now" being cut and pasted. I wanted it written out every single time, and so if anyone is paying attention to it and looking at it and comparing N's and O's and W's, they'll see that each "now" is slightly different.
Well, this is fascinating, because not only are your two works here, do they demonstrate your awareness and consciousness and your appreciation for, in terms of comics history in an older kind of style, the actual technical aspects in terms of the font and the lettering is something that you've researched and you even engage in painstakingly now.
Oh yeah, and I use most of the time, Little Tommy Lost was entirely drawn with dip pens, an inkwell, nibs, and then brush towards the end. But I wanted it to brush and litho crayon toward the end, because I wanted it to be authentic to the period. I generally draw with dip pens when I draw anything. Black Rat, I experimented more with tools, so I'm still using dip pens for things like the first story, but then in other ones, I'm drawing with pencil as rough as I can to kind of convey an art brut feeling. I wanted a lot of it to feel like outsider art, to feel like it could have come out of an asylum in the 1920s or been found in somebody's room after they die. Good Lord, we discovered that this guy's been drawing comics his whole life. And they show that off.
Now, you were talking about, in terms of Little Tommy Lost, that this is something that you had started a long time ago, and then Annie Koyama kept nudging you, trying to pull you along to it eventually came out. How did you get connected with Koyama Press?
I have
yeah, someone behind us is not too happy.
I don't know if that... I think that was a vote of confidence for the press. We have a mutual friend who I have actually never met, this weird modern internet age of not knowing people that you know. But Jordan Shively is from my hometown, and he had a little press called Grimalkin Press where he was making an anthology called Hive, and I was just just feeling comfortable with maybe letting people look at my work. And so I submitted some stuff to him, and he had printed it. And just as I was defaulting on that and deciding I wasn't ready to be out in the world, he showed my work to Annie Koyama, and then Annie got in touch with me, and we kind of had a back and forth for a year or two before we had a sit down and a really long talk. And I realized that she was, not only did she make me feel better about my work in general, but I felt like she was the person that I trusted to represent it properly. And so also she let me do all of the design for it, so another publisher might have wanted to rework parts, or they might have insisted on hiring a cover artist or a designer to do it. I did all of the production work, all of the design on both books. And so when Little Tommy Lost got nominated for the Eisner Award for publication design, it was a really good feeling, and it was because I had total freedom to do exactly.
You feel this is truly yours.
Oh yeah, and that goes to the positive and negative. If I see something that I'm not happy with in a book, it's okay. I know that it's my mistake, so I can feel good if I do find something that's slightly wrong. But I love being able to. I'm kind of a control freak, I guess, from time to time. Being able to be responsible for exactly how it looks and exactly how it feels when it's in a person's hand. This cover stock I picked because I love the way it feels in the hand.
Now, you mentioned that there are other projects that you're working on right now. You mentioned you wanted to get those out of the way before you get back to Little Tommy Lost. What are some of those other projects that you can't tell us about?
I can't say anything. I'm also, it's part of it's that I'm a very superstitious person. A lot of people say that I have OCD because they pile books up in their house, or they, have to hold their fork a certain way. I'm OCD because I flip the light switch a certain number of times so my whole family won't die, And I had those same kind of feelings about the stories that I'm working on. That, kind of like you'll jinx it if you put it out in the air, or you'll ruin it, or you'll lose track of it. But but I will work on something for years until I'm sure that it's right. And other times I come up with something and it's done immediately. Black Rat was over the course of 3 years probably. Several of the stories I did instantly. The first story is 34 pages, and I think it was written and drawn in maybe 3 or 4 days, whereas that last story took considerably longer, and then the lettering itself took an entire work week. It's just I work at different paces with things, and then sometimes I'm actively discussing the things I'm working on, and other times I'm holding them inside like a secret. So it's tough. No, I can't really talk about it, but hopefully stuff that people will like. Definitely nothing that would surprise anybody to see it coming from me, since I'm always looking at old things. I love old things. I love old printing techniques. I love reading old stories. A lot of people won't read old books because they think that the language gets antiquated, and I love that stuff. I read a lot of old fairy tales from the 19th century and stuff. I like that kind of language, and then I like that kind of illustration. I like that kind of presentation.
Well, as you were saying at the beginning of our interview, doing the research for the language of Little Tommy Lost and not using Geronimo because it would have been an anachronism. Yeah. So, doing your research and an appreciation for that older form of expression.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was unique to Tommy, is that I wanted Tommy to be an artifact, that it's like, and I've heard from a few people that they've looked at it and at first they thought it was an old collection, and that's exactly what I wanted. But Dan Nadell, who used to have Picture Box, he put out a couple of great collections of unknown work in comics, and I loved the way that he had just cut out strips on the page, scanned with very little cleanup. I loved the way that looked, and so I wanted this to feel kind of like that, like someone had found an old relative died, and you found their collection of newspaper comic strip clippings and then scanned them one at a time and set them up on the page. So that's why Tommy is supposed to feel like an old album of strips, whereas Black Rat is a much more I don't know if the word is experimental, but it goes in and out of those things. Some of the stories are faithful to the period that they resemble, and others are completely not. But it's just very.
And as you're flipping through this, I'm reminded of, interspersed among all of these stories is a black page with a series of rats that are forming shapes of one form or another. So are these, is there a pattern to those?
Yeah, well, there are, I have to count. Oh, I thought there were not 7. I guess there are 9 stories. But there's one line of the box for every story.
It's on the cover.
Yeah, and so there's this box that is on the cover, and then it appears in every story along with the rat that kind of unifies things. And the chapter headers are rats drawing that box out until we've got it. But, 1 for the first story, 2 rats for the second story, until we reach the final story.
So like each of these is kind of like a facet of that cube or box.
Absolutely, and they all fit together to make the whole.
So as a way to bring all of those together in kind of a cohesive manner. Yeah. Because one could, and that's great because one could look at Black Rat as a collection of different stories that are linked primarily through their Black Rat presence. But what you've done here with these black pages, I guess chapter pages, interspersed among the various sections, is that's creating maybe a more solid feeling of cohesion that brings everything together.
Sure.
Like a cube.
Yeah, it's because I kind of wanted it to feel like a one-man anthology, but at the same time, because I didn't want it to be one story the whole way through, but the character of the rat and the cube appear in everything, and then my hand and my voice are very present in everything, even when I'm specifically referencing another artist. I wanted them to all still feel like they were coming from the same place. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, Little Tommy Lost was nominated by the Eisners. I wish you the best of luck with Black Rat, that it gets the similar recognition, if not more.
Oh, thank you so much.
So, Cole, thank you very much for talking with the Comics Alternative.
Yeah, thank you. It's good talking to you.
I'm here with Meags Fitzgerald. Her new book, Long Red Hair, is it just about to come out, or has it just now come out?
Just come out. It's available for the first time now here at SPX.
Okay, and through Conundrum.
Yep, Conundrum Press.
Yes, someone that we've talked quite a bit about over the past several months, in fact.
Yeah, I think Conundrum's doing a lot of new and exciting work, and I'm really happy to be part of that team.
Yeah, the thing about, before getting to Long Red Hair, maybe as a way of getting there is talking a little bit about Conundrum. I mean, I had known about Conundrum books in the Canadian, not the American version. Yeah. That's a completely different publisher. But I'd known about them, a few years earlier, but it hasn't been until the past year, maybe year and a half, that I started to make much more of a concerted effort to read Conundrum Press books, and then along with that discuss these over the podcast. So they're getting more of my attention, and I'm wondering, is this me, or is Conundrum making more of a concerted effort to get the word out about their books and their authors? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think they're definitely getting more attention now, and the more attention they get, the more acclaimed authors that they're starting to publish, and so the company's just building upon its own success. In 2016, it's going to be its 20th anniversary, so it's been around for a while, but when they first started, they were publishing a lot of novels, and now it's exclusively graphic novels. So I think it has been for about 5 years. So I think because they've really focused themselves in comics and graphic novels, they've really started to find their audience.
So let's talk about Long Red Hair. Now, I'm sitting in front of you right now. You have red hair, but I was hearing you talk to someone right before I came up to introduce myself to you that you don't naturally have this color red hair. You're an auburn.
Yeah, it's true. I dye my hair, and I explain it in the book. That it's sort of part of an identity that I've chosen to take on for myself in the process of sort of becoming my own ideal partner. So rather than seeking a relationship that's very fulfilling, I decided to just sort of in the last few years really work on myself and enjoy my own company. And part of that is becoming my own version of an ideal beauty. And I have always found myself attracted to women with red hair, and so it kind of felt like a natural progression for me.
Okay. So getting into the book, how would you describe Long Red Hair to those who are wanting to read it but haven't yet gotten their hands on it?
So the book is mostly comprised of stories from my childhood, and a lot of them are very quiet stories, but I think people will be able to relate to them. And there are a lot of stories that have to do with that time before puberty, before you're really sexually curious, but you are curious enough to kind of know there's something there, there's an inkling. So when you're starting to feel attraction, but before it's actually a sexual attraction, when it's more just sort of a pull towards something. So it explores a lot of questions about your body as a young woman, the fear of puberty, the fear of menstruation, and a lot of it is really, the whole book is infused with this influence from witchcraft. Witchcraft and Wicca in the actual sense, but also in the pop culture sense. So in the 90s, there was this huge infusion of witch and supernatural inspired TV shows and movies.
Charmed and things like that.
Yeah, Buffy, The Craft, that sort of thing. And even more light shows like Sabrina the Teenage Witch. And so it was really all around us. And now that I think that us sort of preteen girls who experience that are, approaching our 30s and we're now creators, we're really seeing that influence come through in the stuff that we're making. And I think the idea that there's this powerful witch figure that's coming back, the witch is a very popular idea right now, it's not a coincidence. Often throughout history, women have turned back to the witch and become more interested in the idea of the witch when they have been seeking more power and seeking a voice, because the witch is really, singularly feminine. Even though, of course, there can be male witches, it's always been a symbol of women's strength.
So all of that is woven into the book as well, and you say it takes place primarily around the period of adolescence?
Mm-hmm, yeah, so a lot of the book is set in sort of 1997, 1998. So for me, that was sort of the ages where I was like 9 to 11.
Yeah. How different is this in terms of it being a personal book from Photo Booth? I mean, it may seem like an obvious question because it's quite strikingly different. I mean, that was a personal book for you as well, though.
Yeah, so Photo Booth was extremely personal. It took a lot of emotional energy to write because it was a subject matter I cared so deeply about, but this was a very different experience because I wanted to share with the reader, I wanted to be open and I wanted to be honest, but it's also tough to not feel vulnerable and to feel a little raw by sharing so much. I think that the more you're willing to share, the more the reader can connect with, and so I wanted to be honest that way. Though admittedly the strangest parts in it are not so much when you're sharing, but you're putting words in the mouths of your parents and your siblings and your best friends when you're writing speech bubbles for things that they've said. So you're kind of roping your inner circle in a little bit more in the writing experience.
Well, and you're also walking a very fine line because then someone can look at that and say, I have a problem with how you represent me, or why are you representing me? You're unfair to me, or I just don't want to be represented in a work of narrative in this way. Have you had those reactions to your work?
I haven't, because I think I've been very good about asking for people's approval beforehand. Asking for the permission to start with, and then sending work to them and asking for approval. I have one best friend that is like the main sort of friend that I keep going back to in Long Red Hair, and I, throughout this whole process, made sure she was okay with how I was representing her, because I share a lot of personal information about herself as well, and her sex life as an adult, and because there also are chapters in Long Red Hair from my adult perspective. And so she's a writer, and she understood the importance of being honest and being real, and she was okay with that, but I changed her name in the book just to sort of protect her a little bit. I didn't change the names of my family members, obviously, because they are who they are. But everyone else in the book, I changed both their names and their likenesses. So I talked about, my first boyfriend in high school and experiencing my first kiss with him, and that wasn't actually a very positive experience, as readers may find out. And so it was a good idea to change his name.
Now, I was telling you before we started to record this interview that I've pre-ordered a copy of Long Red Hair, but I haven't received it yet. Thus, I haven't looked at it. So I'm not privy to anything other than what you're telling me and what the solicitation was in previews. But you mentioned that there are adult perspective parts of the narrative and then adolescent. What are some of the challenges of trying to separate the voice of who you are now versus the perspective of who you remember yourself to be then?
I found it much, much easier to write from my childhood perspective because I know that the reader will know I've changed, obviously, and in 20 years, right? And so I wasn't afraid of my childhood self being judged. But when you're writing from your current perspective or relatively more recent perspective, it's hard to ignore the judgment that might come from that, especially with a subject that's so deeply personal. So whenever you make something, you're opening yourself to create all these new connections and new friendships and just new bonds with readers. But then the flip side of that is also true. You're welcoming critique. So I hope people are gentle with me if they don't like it.
Now, again, when you first introduced yourself to me and we started to talk, you said, I listen to the podcast. And one of the things I find curious is how people, and especially creators, learn about the Comics Alternative. How did you learn about our podcast?
Actually, I first learned about you guys because your website did a review of Photo Booth, a biography.
So that's how you found out?
Yeah. And so
hold on. Thank you very much, Beth, for doing that review. Otherwise, we wouldn't have one listener who now we're talking with.
Yeah, so I found the website, and then from there I found out you guys had a podcast, and so I subscribed on iTunes, and yeah.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate that. So good luck with everything with the release of Long Red Hair, and do you have any other plans of cons for the future to help publicize this?
Just a few small ones, and then I've got it's like Exposine in Montreal. I'm doing a literary festival in Waterloo, Ontario, and then I've got tour dates in Western Canada where I'm just visiting comic book shops and doing talks and signings.
Yeah. So. Well, good luck with all those travels.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, and thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
Well, Derek, that was a lot of great conversations, and if you enjoyed those, we've got even more on the way.
That's right. The next 2 episodes that will be going up, and it should be going up on Friday and on Saturday, believe it or not, will include a variety of other creators. And we want to thank everyone who spoke with us at SPX, and we had a great time. We hope that you, our dear listener, did as well. And if you want to find great comics by some of the creators that we talked with today, then you have to check out the website of our sponsor, which is Discount Comic Book Service. Go to dcbservice.com and you'll find specials like you've never seen before. And after you do get your comics there, do get in touch with us and let us know what you think of our conversations. You can go to our website, comicsalternative.com, and on the right-hand side of your browser, you'll find a tab that says Send Voicemail. Click on that, and from the comfort of your own desktop or mobile device, you can record a voice message through the wonders of SpeakPipe. It's very simple and easy to use. Or you can pick up the phone and call us that way. Our number is 415-3-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427.
And if you would like to see what's going on with the blog as far as updates to that and to the podcast itself, the best way to do that is to follow us on Twitter. We are at the number 2 guys with PhDs, and we thank everyone for retweeting our tweets.
That's right. You can also send us an email. You can email us at 2guys@comicsalternative.com. Or contact me directly. I'm Derek at comicsalternative.com. And Andy, how do they get in touch with you?
You can reach me at Wolverton at comicsalternative.com.
You can also find us on Facebook, on Tumblr, on Instagram, on Google+, and on Pinterest. And if you like to listen to your media via YouTube, well, we have a YouTube channel, so you can check us out there as well. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can also find us on TuneIn. And as always, you can find every single one of our episodes, as well as our reviews and the comics-related commentary that we post on our blog. And that's at the website, comicsalternative.com.
And there will be something there for everyone.
That's right. So we thank you for listening. Come back over the next 2 days and listen to our other interviews that we conducted at SPX. Until then, I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy.
We'll see you later.